Welcome to Do You Approve This Groove, a project where two old friends dive headfirst into the 500 greatest albums of all time and beyond. We're going to relive them like we're trading the ultimate mixtape, one legendary record at a time. Each episode, we take a deep dive into iconic albums, rediscover their magic, and see if they hold up after all of these years. We'll rank each album and open up our hot takes for discussion. So whether you're hearing it for the first time or for the 100th, whether you agree or disagree, we're turning the volume up and bringing you along for the ride. In this episode, we count down albums 460 through 451. Kyle and I continue to butt heads when it comes to Motown, but we can at least agree on anthologies and their places on this list. Apparently krautrock is a thing, and we both really liked it, and we hope you do too. We also have a timely discussion on recently passed away Roberta Flack and her contributions to the list. I am Tyler, and he is still Kyle. Let's get to it.
All right, Tyler, we're back again. Actually, I'm excited to talk this week because we're going to be closing out the first 50 albums from this list. But so I think we have a lot to talk about. But
we'll be 10% done. Progress.
yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, it's been a lot of listening so far. I think it might be fun to maybe recap the first 50. I've got some thoughts that I want to share. I don't know if it fits into like this episode. Like if we're going to be, we're going to be focusing on talking about the 10 albums from this episode. So I don't know if it fits, but sure. I have some thoughts about the journey so far maybe. That it'd be fun to talk about. How's everything going on your end right now?
Good. I know my lighting isn't great. Like we were saying before, I don't have 4K in here, but I do want to address that I do have a little bit of a black eye.
Oh.
At work today, I told everybody a different reason every time I saw or somebody asked about it, so that was fun. Like I took up hockey, I went skiing, I had an icicle, anything, right? A bird flew into me, anything. But really what happened is, I know you saw the picture, I did some housework over the weekend and finished my kitchen ceiling, which has been a year and a half of raw sheetrock and me just hemming and hawing about how to do it. Anyways, I finally started it, and I had a 14-foot trim piece that was up there wedged in there, and it fell and hit the countertop and bang, hit me in the cheekbone right there.
Ooh.
But the fun thing is that it snapped in half when it hit me. So I am like with my cheek, just so yeah, so literally you should have seen the other guy, he was broken in half. So you know what I mean, but for the dozens of viewers we have on YouTube, I just wanted to address it before people wondered. You know what I mean, if they needed to make a CPS call for me or something like that. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad.
How are you?
I'm glad to hear it. I was a little concerned.
Okay, so for these 10 albums, Kyle, I've been chomping at the bit to talk about these. I know last week, at the very end of last episode, as we were wrapping up, we said, with break, maybe we could sneak one in sooner. And then it didn't work out, which is fine. I've been psyched to talk about these for a few days.
Yeah.
And you mentioned doing a recap of the top 50, and I think it would be a good time to do it soon, because this group of 10, more so than any of them, it's not, I didn't hate any of them, right? Which, hey, that's progress.
Yep.
But there are really surprises in this group of 10.
Yeah.
Which I'm ready to talk about. This was a cool cut of 10 albums to check out. So I'm psyched to talk about them.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's definitely a lot in this list this week that it's full of things that I probably wouldn't have listened to otherwise. And now that I did listen to it, and I'm just, shocked by what I thought about a lot of them on this list this week.
And it covered a lot of genres. And we've had other kind of episodes where we covered a lot of genres, but there were some clunkers in there. I felt I don't think there were clunkers in this one.
No.
Like I said, I like some of them more than others, but these were cool. Yeah. I liked them, so I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, let's jump into it.
Sure.
Let's do it. So at 460, the 460 greatest album of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine, is Lord's Melodrama. Lorde, of course, is the New Zealand singer-songwriter. I think she's like a poet laureate of New Zealand. They gave her that like sort of distinction a while ago. This is her second studio album. It was released on June 16th of 2017. It came to us through Universal imprints, Lava and Republic. There's a couple different producers on this. Most notably, we've mentioned his name before, Jack Antonoff. I have more to say about him in this album. This album is 40 minutes and 59 seconds. Again, entitled Melodrama. Kyle, what did you think?
All right, so this album, more than any album that we've listened to so far, has made me come to terms with the fact that my perception of pop music is just wrong. I started to get the feel with like Harry Styles and Lady Gaga, but even with them, it was kind of like, oh, like I'm surprised I kind of like this. I don't generally think I like pop music, but this stuff is halfway decent. Those two have kind of led up to this album where now I'm just like, no, I'm just wrong. Like the way I approach pop music, the way I always have approached pop music is just wrong. And I think a lot of it has to do with the pop music that we grew up with, you know, the 90s, like the bubblegum pop, and then, you know, leading into the boy bands and the Christina Aguileras and Britney Spears and that sort of thing. Like that to me is pop music. And to me, that is much more of a commodity than it is an art form. But that's
manufactured.
Yeah, pop, yeah. And that's just kind of been the perception of pop music that I've just carried forward into, you know, the rest of my life. And this is not that. Like this has depth and soul and substance, and it just has so much going on that I really, really enjoyed this album. And I don't want to say too much about Jack Antonoff because I don't know enough to really get into it. But the thing that I came away with it was, I mean, I didn't know until I looked into it. I got like probably halfway through the album before I started really looking into the credits and saw his name. And it was just one of those names that's like, man, like everything that I've liked lately, he seems to be attached to.
If you'll recall, I think it was our first episode, and my first I've Got One Better segment talked about one of his albums from his band Steel Train.
Yep.
It's not bullshit, man. He's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
I have more to say about him and his contributions to this album, but please go on.
That's exactly it. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to make pop music.
Yes, and before we get into some of the songs and our reactions to those, are you familiar with her first studio album?
No. Nope.
Okay. Her first studio album is called Pure Heroin, and it had the song Royals on there.
Yeah, I know that. I know the song.
Heard, okay, yeah, okay. I think that is a better album than this one. I really do. However, I think that this musically, I think this is a stronger album. I liked her lyrics better. I like the content better. I like the melodies a lot. I think that Jack Antonoff is the reason this album is on the list. And I don't mean to say that that the people that, well, maybe some of them did, that the people that decided this album should be on the list did it to honor Jack Antonoff. Lorde is great and she deserves a lot of credit. Obviously, she's talented. She's a singer-songwriter. She's got her ideas. She's got, right, all that. But musically, I think it carries this. There were some lyrics in this one that I was just like, wait, what? Like, I can't remember which song it is. But it's the one where she says, I'll love you till your breathing stops. I'll love you till we call the cops or something like this. And I was like, this feels like a Dr. Seuss book. Yeah. Like, I don't like, this seems very cheesy. But the music, there were parts of this, I think the song is Liability, towards the end where like it almost takes a shift, and then there's just maybe like 30 to 45 seconds of instrumentals, and I wanted to hear more of that.
Yeah.
And the track that people will gravitate towards most is Greenlight, the first song in this on this album. I'm pretty sure it was the lead single. It got picked up by a lot of media as it's been in commercials. It was on the show New Girl in a very pivotal moment of that series. My daughters have loved Greenlight since it came out. Like, it's just a great song. And I think the overarching like hook in that song is there's this piano part in there, right? And when this came out and I first heard this, being a Jack Antonoff fan, not realizing that he was as part of this album, I was like, that's Jack Antonoff playing this piano. I know it is. I
You could hear
that
it.
is a Jack Antonoff piano part. Yes, 100%. The way that it was mixed, all that sort of stuff. And then sure enough, you see the music video and there he is. And then, you see, got the, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Go me, right? All that is to say, like, I enjoyed the instrumentation, the arrangements, the music of this, the instrumentals more than I enjoyed her lyrics or her singing.
Mm-hmm.
But I say that saying that like I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like there's yeah, that's where I'm coming at it from. I'm interested in what songs stuck out to you.
The one that I wrote down that I think struck me the hardest was Writer in the Dark. It was, as far as the rest of the album goes, it was a much more stripped down song, more straightforward, more focused on the vocals, on her and her singing. I thought it showcased her ability to sing really well, and I think what I appreciated about it was that it knew how to get the music to serve the lyrics and the message of the song. That was the big one that stuck out for me. But I mean, really, the entire way through the whole album, I mean, I was nodding my head. I was in it and listening and engaged with every song as it played.
Yeah, I like this one. The Louvre was a really good one. I thought that I enjoyed it. It was cool. I still think that Pure Heroine is a better album. Like that one's when you look at some of the notes on these, Pure Heroine is a more stripped down minimalist album. Like there's some like some beat loops and stuff like that. It's pretty low key. This one is definitely musically way more filled out. Yeah, I mean it did a lot. She received a nomination for Album of the Year at the Grammys. This was, I think it said her first album to go #1 in the US, #1 in Australia, New Zealand, obviously. It went #1 on the US Billboard 200 and #1 on the US Top Alternative Albums chart. And then it charted all over the world fairly highly. Let's see, it went platinum in the US, but again, platinum, I don't even know how they measure platinum now, because it's not millions of records sold. It has something to do with streams and stuff like that. But it's certified platinum in the U.S., the U.K., and in Australia. I'm sorry, it's gold in the U.K., platinum in Australia, double platinum in Canada. Go Canucks. Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed this one. Greenlight to me is a standout. Other songs were good. Greenlight is a great song. Like in my opinion, Greenlight is a great song. Mm-hmm. I would love to talk about Pure Heroine someday. Spoiler alert, because I have a theory that album is about the French Revolution. As a history guy, there's just too many things that line up for it to be coincidence. I think that's really interesting. Someday we'll talk about that one too. Kyle, what did you score this one?
I gave this a 3.5.
Same.
Yeah, this was a strong album for me. Not something, not cream of the crop. Something that I'm dying to re-listen to and put into my rotation on heavy repeat, but something that I really appreciated. And I think I will remember this album for a long time because of, like I said at the beginning, how this album kind of made me shift my perspective of pop music.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think this is squarely in between like something that I simply just wouldn't skip and something I would seek out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are in given a mood or a vibe that I was going for, I'd put a couple of these songs on again. So yeah. All right, that was Lord's Melodrama in at 460. The next album on the list in at 459 is Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon, The End of Day. This album was released in 2009 on September 15th. It's through, let's see, it says Dream On Records, which I think is part of a Universal Motown imprint. There's a lot of producers on this one, most notably Kanye West, and for the sake of our discussion, Rat-a-Tat, which I'm excited to talk about that song more. This is the debut studio album of American rapper Kid Cudi, Scott Mescudi, who has gone on to be an actor in some things. He's doing pretty well. He's kind of an eclectic artist. And this album definitely takes on some of that sort of artistic aspects. This is not a straightforward hip hop album like we heard from Juvenile earlier, 400 Degrees. This is a different one. It's 58 minutes and 33 seconds long because there's a lot of tracks. This is dense. I'm excited to talk about this one. Kyle, what did you think of this one?
This is one that I don't know how much I'm going to have to say about this, other than
I will carry us then. Go.
Other than I loved it.
Oh, good. Okay. Good.
Yeah, so hip hop adjacent genres are not my forte. They're not my strong suit. It's not something that I have enough of a reference to know enough of what to talk about with stuff like this. And so a lot of it with this album is just going on feels, on vibes, on just kind of generally what was I thinking and feeling when I was listening to it? Was I picking up on anything interesting going on? This was a moody, I don't know if I want to say dark, but definitely getting on that dark side. Like, he very clearly has, I don't know, struggles with finding himself, knowing who he is as a person, mental health struggles, it seems, that sort of thing. And this was a ride. This was a ride. It was a roller coaster of ups and downs. Like, it made me feel like living the life that he's describing in a lot of these songs, because there were parts that were up, that were fun. Like Intergalactic was like a just a high of a ride. But then I think my favorite song on this was Solo Dolo. And that was a much more, like, I don't want to say mean, but like menacing feel to it. I think the thing that struck me the most with this was how well the beats, the music match the feel of the lyrics. It felt like they were written for each other. It felt like they served each other in a lot of ways.
Right, and the opposite of that is some hip hop tracks where, like, there's a beat, and I like the beat, and here's my bars over it, and they're parallel. I agree with you 100% that these seem like they came together, like, intertwined, right?
Yeah.
Like, the music, the lyrics inform the music inform the lyrics, and back and forth.
And it seemed like, I mean, I know a lot of times in hip hop and rap and that sort of thing, the people who make the beats, who write the beats, who do the music aren't necessarily the people who are rapping over them. And I don't honestly know if that's the case or not with Kid Cudi here, but it seems like if he wasn't the one making these beats, he was very intimately involved in the process of making it because they worked so well together. It was conversational. It was like vulnerable. It was almost like hip hop emo. not in
Mm-hmm.
the like, and I know that actually has kind of become a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not like a blending of genres, but more of like if emo had a foothold in hip hop, that's what this would be. It was almost like an
Let me
acoustic version of hip hop.
let me ask you this: was this your first exposure to this album?
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, okay, interesting. I knew this since it came out because there was um, there was just enough interest in the scene, I guess, in what he was doing with this concept album, and like you said, that sort of more music forward album, that it bled into some of that alternative world that I was like where I lived in, right
Hmm.
at the time that this came out. Um, so like I remember listening to this barely enough that this came back to me. It's not like I spun it a ton, but I was really familiar with it. Um, and it's funny to hear the stuff that you said about kind of your takes on the music, because yeah, that's like, to me that's exactly why it resonated with me when I first listened to it.
Yeah.
All of those things. Um, this is a concept album which Common narrates, and you're absolutely right. He's been fairly upfront, not maybe with the details, but with some of his mental health stuff, kind of in and out of his career, active, not active, taking care of himself, doing those sorts of things. So the album definitely delves into some of his self discovery and what he's going through. Um, I I think that we're gonna. I sometimes when I listen to an album, I think about songs like I call them a heater, right? Like if this album has a heater, when you go from Cuddy's Own to Make Her Say and then Pursuit of Happiness, this to me is an all-time three-song heater. Like those three, you could put on and listen to and just like, oh man, like it doesn't get better. Like there's actually one other album in this episode that we're going to talk about, which also has a couple of heaters,
Hmm.
but like I that's one of the strongest three-song entries in my opinion that I've come across ever, but definitely in this list.
I actually I noted down two of the three of those songs. Cuddy's
Which
Own
one
and
didn't you know?
the third one. I have Cuddy's Own and Make Her Say.
Okay, so Pursuit of Happiness, we had talked about Rat-a-tat, is features MGMT, right? Which again I talked about how he just crossed over into that indie world, right?
Hmm.
Pursuit of Happiness was a song that like my buddy that would DJ at the bar that we went to in 2009 would put on at 1 in the morning, and it got the people going. Like
Yeah.
I mean, that group of people that lived in Rochester, like, oh man. In fact, I was listening to this when I was working this weekend, and texting like these songs to some of my friends that I hung out with at that time, like just like, oh dude, I listened to this and I just want to go play darts right now, like, you know what I mean. So it's very nostalgic for me. But have MGMT on there singing the hook, produced by Rat-a-tat, like the whole sound is, yeah, I would give Pursuit of Happiness another spin as part of that
Yeah.
three song arc. The other song in that arc, Make Her Say, is produced by Kanye West solely,
Hmm.
where he chops up Poker Face from Lady Gaga in a very suggestive way.
Yep.
That song stands out on the album for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's energy, it's attitude, it's lyrical content. Like it's just different. But I really enjoy that one. And then Cuddy's Own, yeah, it's just like this album has not cheesy hooks. It just has hooks.
Yeah.
Like there's just melodies that you can hum along to and
Hmm.
sing along to, like, which I really really appreciate. I'll come out and say it. Look, this album is a 5 for me, which I think is my
Nice.
first 5 so far.
That is your first five.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a 5. I love everything about this. Even the songs that like aren't my favorite, like they're good songs.
Still good songs.
But I will vibe with this album a lot.
I mean, I would definitely say
Yep.
it's a no skip album for me. Like I could listen to every
Yeah.
single song on this album. I noted down with Cuddy's Own how you could hear his confidence building in that
Mm-hmm.
song. And so now I'm interested to go back and re-listen to that run of 3 songs again with that in mind, you know, how you frame it like that. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this album as well. I didn't give it a 5, but I gave it a strong 4. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really good album.
Another unsung song I think that we didn't talk about is Up Up and Away, which is the 15th track. So if I got rid of Higher, the 14th track, that puts Cuddy's Own, Make Her Say, Pursuit of Happiness, there's that song Higher, and then Up Up and Away is a 5-song arc. And again, very, very strong entry from Scott Mescudi.
Yep.
Man on the Moon, End of Day from Kid Cudi is the 459th best album according to Rolling Stone, and my favorite that we've listened to so far. Jason Isbell's Southeastern is in at 458 on the Rolling Stone greatest albums of all time. Southeastern is his 4th studio album. It's produced by Dave Cobb. It's 47 minutes and 18 seconds long on the Southeastern label, which I don't know if that's a coincidence or this was kind of his deal. Maybe you know about that, Kyle, but
No, I
the
don't.
label that this is attributed to is also called Southeastern. It came out on June 11th, 2013. What do you think about this one, Kyle?
This is the one that I've been excited to talk about.
Interesting.
Since I first listened to this, and this album was my first exposure to Jason Isbell when I first listened to this back in November, late November, I think I first listened to this. I've probably listened to this album a dozen times since then. I mean, I'll jump right out and say it, just put it out there right at the beginning of talking about this. You just gave your first 5. This is my third 5. This is everything that I want from a rock album. And I was thinking about it and just trying to think about what it is about this album that really just grabs me. And I think the best way to approach it for me is comparing it to that Miranda Lambert album from an episode or 2 ago, because it is, I mean, I say it's a rock album, but it's a country rock album. It's I mean, that's what he is. And the one thing that I had said about Miranda Lambert's album was that it felt like a lot of the songs were like, she wanted to write a sad song, so she did the things that she knew she needed to do to accomplish that. And it didn't necessarily feel like I am sad and I'm expressing that through my music. This album is devastating. This album is just a gut punch. There's some rockin' songs on this. There's some good, like, upbeat, fun songs, but
Super 8, I don't understand. That feels so out of place. Super 8 feels like like a stray bullet in this one. You just said like a fun and rockin' song. Like that's the one that stands out to me.
Yeah.
It just, I'm not saying that it doesn't belong, because I get there needs to be a change of pace in an album every once in a while. But that one was one of the ones that I was like, wait, what the hell is going on with this song?
A little out of nowhere. I think the thing that I first noticed about this album, the first thing that struck me about this album is that it starts off with a song in 6/8 and then a song in 3/4. Just starting off an album on just a slightly different note with a different time signature. It's not just coming out the gate with that 4/4 straight ahead sort of thing. It started off with a couple of songs in slightly less conventional time signatures. This album felt like it was the right medium for expressing what he wanted to express. It wasn't just, we're a country band, so we're going to write our country songs and they're sad and that is what it is. But this was the right choice, the right genre, I don't think this album would work as well for me if it were in any other genre. And I'm not a country fan. Like I'm my exposure to country isn't very extensive. I don't generally tend to go out of my way to listen to country, but I don't think this album would work in any other genre. And if I had to pick one song, I don't know. Traveling Alone is a fantastic song, but I just quick story listening to this album. I was driving with my son. I was listening to this album. It was 10 days ago or so. It was last Sunday. It's what, Monday. So a little over a week ago. I was driving up, taking him to a wrestling tournament. It was just the two of us in the car. He was in the back. He was kind of napping, not paying attention. I was listening to this album, and the song Elephant came on. And I got emotional listening to that song, and have again listening to it. And it is just unlike a lot of music that I've ever experienced, the way that song pulled me in. And I said this, one of my other fives was John Mayer's Continuum, and I talked about Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, and how a bad breakup like that isn't something that I've experienced in a very long time. I'm married for almost 11 years, with my wife for 16, 17 years. But when I listen to that song, I feel that. When I listen to Elephant, I've never, I've certainly had family members pass and that sort of thing, but I've never had that kind of experience that song is about. Personally happened to me, but listening to it, I felt like I had. And it's songs like that just grab me and make me feel what it is without necessarily having that experience myself. That means a lot to me. I mean, and they're just fantastic songs all the way through. That would be probably the one song on this album that just superb.
Does that song, do you get goosebumps when you hear it without thinking about it? It just
yeah.
Again, I forget what that is, but it's called frisson. Frisson is French for shiver or goosebumps. It describes the intense emotional and psychological experience some people have while listening to music or witnessing other powerful stimuli, such as powerful speeches or awe-inspiring moments.
Oh yeah, I've definitely.
Does that happen to you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like now that we're talking about that, I feel like I don't know if I could give an album a 5 if it didn't have a song that did that for me.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to go back. The John Mayer album definitely did. This album definitely did a couple of times. Traveling.
You gave Belle and Sebastian a 5, didn't you? You gave Belle and Sebastian a 5? No. It wasn't that one.
No, that was miserable. It was King Sunny Ade was my other 5.
That one gave you goosebumps. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Flying over water.
Album.
Yeah.
That Bonnie Bear album.
Yeah. No. Flying Over Water gets me close. Stockholm.
Songs that she sang in the shower is my favorite.
Yeah.
On this album.
Yeah. But
that one, I was also thinking about this because, you mentioned, this is labeled as alternative country or Americana. And I don't know much about that, but there were some, you also talked about genres in this one. There were some songs that struck me as oh, this is country-mo.
Yeah.
These are emotional country songs. And I know that country has a very long history of putting emotions at the forefront with storytelling and stuff like that. There were parts of this album that seemed like one guy and his guitar, and he's just telling us how he feels. Which, if you're going to reduce it, isn't that all music? But right. This one was, I gave this one a 3. Just because I think that this is a fairly lyrics forward album, which again doesn't do much. It's not the thing that grabs me. I will say that in songs like Songs She Sang in the Shower, I didn't even pay that close attention to the lyrics, but the idea and the chorus I understood enough, and the melody of that one I really enjoyed. You listen to that, or you hear that title and you're like, I got an idea this is not a happy song. You know what I mean? So that one spoke to me quite a bit. Others I thought were solid. I'm interested to listen to Elephant again after your description of it.
That's when you definitely have to listen to the lyrics for that one. I mean, that's definitely a lyrics Definitely a lyric
I was
song.
just I was just reading the notes about it as you were talking about it, and yeah, I can see why.
Um,
Um,
and I
yeah,
mean,
that's a good one.
the whole thing is, talking about emotion first in country music. I don't know a ton about his life. Like I said, this was my first exposure to him. I have since re-listened to this album quite a few times and listened to quite a bit of the rest of his discography. And I mean, he hasn't had an easy life. He's struggled with addiction issues. He's had a seems like he had a hard life, and that really comes through in a lot of this music.
One interesting thing I saw about this one is that this album was gonna be produced by Ryan Adams. I don't know if you're familiar with him much.
A little bit.
It's a friend of his that he's toured around with. Ryan Adams also did a cover album of Taylor Swift's 1989, which is phenomenal. Stripped down songs, like it's really interesting. Different takes on them. It's pretty cool. And now that I think about that, like I could like if you walked that, there's Taylor Swift, then there's that Adams cover, and then there's this one. I could see a natural progression, like in sound. Anyways, um, Jason Isbell is saying that originally he was supposed to produce it, but when he sent in the demos, Ryan Adams suddenly backed out and decided not to do it. And at first, Isbell thought that it was because he was disappointed, but then he came to understand that Adams was intimidated by the quality of the music. And that like he's like, yeah, you need somebody else. You need like somebody has to do this thing right, that sort of thing, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this about it. I think most, if not all, of the vocals are recorded in one take.
No, I didn't know
Like,
that.
they didn't. And again, I'm just reading the notes on this. I don't know if it's all of most of them, but it's enough for them to have written this. But it says that the producer Dave Cobb encouraged Isbell to record his vocals in one take, live vocals. So if you're not familiar with that, like Billie Eilish gave an interview once that she described the cuts in her lyrics, and sometimes it was like one or two words. There'd be like a different version and a different version. That's like micromanaging every little sound, breath, intonation, fluctuation, everything. And Jason Isbell gets on there and he lets this rip like it's a live show. So obviously the instrumentals are tracked and they're recorded and they're mixed, but him singing over it is from start to finish, bang, done.
Full
Let's
song.
print it. Like
Yeah.
yeah, we're good. Which I always respect that quite a bit. Yeah. Anything else we didn't talk about with this one?
I don't think so. I'm gonna go listen to it again tonight.
High marks from Kyle. That's Jason Isbell's Southeastern in at 4:58. At 4:57 is Sinead O'Connor's I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. This album was released by the Irish Lass on March 12th, 1990. It was recorded over 1988 and 1989. It was released by Ensign and Chrysalis Records. This is her second studio album. It does feature the song Nothing Compares to You, which most of the world will have heard and or heard the story about her appearance on SNL. This is reminds me of Bon Iver, where we joked about, did you know it stands for good winner? Kyle, did you know? Did you know? Kyle, did you know that Nothing Compares to You is actually a Prince song? Did you know that, Kyle? Kyle, did you know that that's actually a Prince song?
Oh, hold
Did you
on.
know he wrote that one?
I gotta cross that off of my things to talk about.
Ah,
Here.
gotcha. You didn't know that? Sinead O'Connor recently passed away within the last year or so, I want to say, something like that.
Yeah, around there.
She put out a lot of music. She's, as I mentioned, this is the 457th on the list. In 2012, it was listed at 408. That doesn't take away from this album at all. What did you think about this album, Kyle?
I was torn on. I was torn like a picture of the Pope.
See what you did there.
Yeah. Thematically, I liked it. She's very socially conscious, and very good at talking about and describing and obviously singing about issues that were important to her, issues that she saw going on at the time. Being Irish and growing up during the Troubles, I'm sure had a big impact on her, and you can hear a lot of that in this. Musically though, and it wasn't even that the music was bad, but it was very much that, like you pointed out way back at the beginning, that Casio keyboard
Mm-hmm.
MIDI sound where everything is just quantized to the beat and everything sounds, every snare hit sounds exactly the same. Every note sounds like it was just perfectly played, and it didn't musically it didn't quite connect with me, but still in kind of a weird way, because it was well written music, but I didn't care for how it was recorded, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, that was just kind of my overall general sense of it, at least.
Yeah, listen to this, and we're going to talk again about this later, I'm sure, but this was squarely an early 90s record. Like,
Yeah.
one of the songs that stood out to me was The Emperor's New Clothes,
Mm-hmm.
which has that very keyboard-esque, like the guitars are mixed, and I can hear the song in my head. I just can't think of what it is as a reference point for it, but that sort of 90s echoey guitar, like a little echoey reverb on there. And that song stands out. Like this album is another roller coaster of like kind of that. Emperor's New Clothes is like its content side is a poppy sounding song, and then you go right from that to Black Boys on Mopeds, which you mentioned is a socially conscious song, which was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a song in general, as a written piece of music, I enjoyed that song.
Mm-hmm.
I think the content, especially for the time, like, I mean, was great. I enjoyed that. And then it goes to Nothing Compares to You. So you really go on this descent from this poppiness right down into this very slow, dramatic, emotional song. And then it, again, it switches back and forth. I really liked The Last Day of Our Acquaintance towards the end, but none of these songs like really grabbed me. Nothing Compares to You is a great song. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a classic. Like there's a lot of reasons that song is great and will continue to be great forever. Um, None of the others were ones that I guess the way I would put it is none of the other songs on this album age very well,
Yeah.
and not because they're cringy. They're not cringy. Like they're not like inappropriate. Like no, they just don't age well.
Yeah.
Like
They're very obviously early 90s songs.
mhm,
For better or
mhm,
worse, they are what they are. Yeah. I mean, I had noted down Black Boys on Mopeds too. That was one that,
mhm.
as I was listening to it, and I don't know, I want to look into it. I haven't yet, but I wonder. I mean, that's such a specific thing to reference that it must have been something that actually happened. Because the song is about how we're kind of hypocrites. We condemn violence in other places and act like we're this shining beacon of freedom, but we're also home to police who kill black boys on mopeds, which is the song.
Right.
So I'm curious to know if that's actually something that happened that she was referencing. That other than Nothing
So is
Compares to You, that was the song that I think got me the most. But overall, yeah,
yeah.
it was all right.
I mean, we know that she's never one to shy away from criticizing authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
The notes on this one says that O'Connor's song "Black Boys on Mopeds" refers to a Thatcher era. That's Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of the UK. A Thatcher era Britain where government concern with protests overseas was prioritized over domestic race issues. The song featured the lyrics Margaret Thatcher on TV, shocked by the deaths that took place in Beijing. England's not the mythical land of Madame George, and Roses is home to police that kill black boys on mopeds. So this was, for our non-history friends, the late 80s and 90s was, I mean, it had already been going on for a while, at least 50 years, but the decolonization of much of the world, and in my opinion, rightfully so. I don't think that's going out on a limb, but the decolonization of most of the world, specifically when they talk about Beijing, I think there's the undertones of Hong Kong returning to Chinese rule, like all that sort of stuff. Um, and then you bring in the other places around the world. I know that around the 90s, this was the end of apartheid in South Africa, things of that nature. So, yeah, she definitely was critical of her government and their take on things, which, hey, I mean, as an artist, you want to say something that you believe in. So, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, there's a reason why this resonated and why she's such a respected artist all those years later, right? We talked about Lord's pop album Melodrama before. I mean, I'm sure if you look at subtext, there are things that you could extrapolate from that would connect to her world and the world we live in with her, but they're not as in the forefront, and she doesn't put it all on the line in the same way Sinead O'Connor does. That's for sure. This album did really well. This is another one of those that when I look at the chart positions, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. There's like maybe 26 entries, and only 1, 2, 3, 4 of them did not peak at number one. So this album moved units. It went platinum everywhere on this list but Switzerland and Austria. So yeah, I mean this is a worldwide sort of classic album that crosses borders, ethnicities, and is very well respected as a piece of music, as an album in general, but also I think on the wings of a really great artist in Sinead O'Connor. What'd you give this one?
I went with a 3 here. I think again, like I
Yep.
said, thematically, I appreciated it. I liked it. I liked the songwriting. What held it back for me was just the recording techniques and processes that they used that just kind of felt very early 90s to me, and I didn't quite connect with that.
Yeah, I wonder if this is one that outside of Nothing Compares to You, if this is one that an artist, in 10, 15, 20 years would be able to mine and reinterpret and, new mixes and stuff like that. I'm sure it's happened, um but I wonder if this is kind of a really a time capsule of music in general and what her world was like, where it's like you can't recreate that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would agree. I give this one a 3. I like this is one that I would not skip, but I wouldn't necessarily seek out
Yeah.
for anything specific.
Yeah.
That was I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got, Sinead O'Connor. The 456th greatest album of all time, according to Rolling Stone, and it has revised its list a few times, including on this one, is Al Green's Greatest Hits. It was released in April of 1975 as a collection of, hold your surprise, Al Green's Greatest Hits. I mean, it was put out through High Right Stuff EMI, produced by Willie Mitchell, but again, this is more of an anthology, a short anthology of his songs. I don't know. I don't really have much more to introduce it about that, other than I did mention that this was rated as the 52nd best album of all time, according to Rolling Stone in 2003. It has since fallen to 456th. Be interested in knowing more about that. Maybe I'll look up some notes as we talk about it. But I mean, he didn't kill a guy. How did he die? I forget. Wait, maybe he's not dead. He's not dead.
Eh,
He's not dead, everybody. He's still alive.
good for him.
The Reverend Al Green. I'll start this one off, Kyle, since you carried the load for the last couple. I spun this one. I texted you today. I said that I was begrudgingly, however you say that, listening to this album again just to freshen up. I am not an R&B connoisseur. Again, we listen to classic rock, which this is not part of it. Maybe that's a shame on some radio stations for not carrying this sort of music. But anyways, at least in our area. So I knew Love and Happiness. I knew Let's Stay Together. Other than that, it didn't register with me. I thought it was just okay. I know that within the music community, but apparently not that much if it fell 400 spots. Um, Al Green himself is a very respected vocalist, singer, musician. Um, yeah. So this one was just kind of a out of all the albums this week, this was a okay. Kind of like I listened to it because it was on the list.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think?
I mean, can I just say ditto and we move on? This, I so
That was Al Green's.
I mean, I would generally agree with everything that you said there. There were a couple of big hits on this that I knew. The first track there, tired of being alone, was one that I know of. This was a good headphone album. There was a lot going on. There's a lot of layers, a lot of interesting stuff going on listening in the headphones. It was just too smooth for me. It was just too easy, like easy listening almost, like just not a ton going on that I really enjoyed. I don't like his voice. I just didn't really care for his voice.
It's almost like in between a chest voice and a falsetto.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just saying
it's a Kermit voice. Like that's he sounds like Patrick Mahomes. I am developing. Right. I'm not going to take it out on this album, but I'm developing a strong opinion about these greatest hits and anthology albums that I'll say more about in a couple of albums here.
I know what the list is, and we're gonna have words. But anyways, go ahead.
So I think I would just echo your sentiments and say, yeah, okay. This is I don't expect to have a strong reaction, positive or negative, to every album on this list of 500 albums, and some of them are just going to be albums that just kind of wash over me and I listen through them and move on, and I don't think that's anything negative about the album itself. It just very much wasn't my thing. Wasn't for me. I probably, if we got to number 53 and this was 53 or 52 or whatever you said it was, I would probably be like, what the hell? But at 450 whatever, yeah, all right. It is what it is. It's an album. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder, like, yeah, in listening to what you said, we talked about this before, like, if we were really worried about views and stuff, we would come out with hot takes on everyone, right? I would say, this is the worst. No. This is just an album, as we react to these. All right, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that in looking at the notes on this one, I mean, he is credited as a writer on every single one of them. So this is not like a list of borrowed songs or re-recorded songs. This is his music. I mean, there's other people that help him, but this is his music.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that, we've listened to some anthologies of some older artists where you look all over and it's like, oh, well, I like this song and I'll do that one and I'll take this one from them. And yeah, you flesh out an album or a double disc or whatever. No, these are all his. So shout out to the Reverend for that, at least. 36 minutes, 34 seconds long on a greatest hits. This album did very, very well and is widely regarded as one of the best greatest hits albums of all time, going 2 times platinum in the US. So it moves some units. It just didn't move them for us. All right. Anything else?
No.
Did we score it?
I gave it.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 3 because I respect it. It is.
Same.
It is.
Yep.
A respectable album, but yeah.
Great. No reason to say anything else. That was Al Green's greatest hits. Nothing great about it to us. And at 456. The 455th greatest albums of all time. I don't know how you're going to edit this, Kyle, but we just did some sleuthing, some music sleuthing. Is Bo Diddley slash Go Bo Diddley released in 1986 that, to the best of our knowledge, is actually a double album release of his first two albums, coincidentally titled Go Bo Diddley. I'm sorry, Bo Diddley and Go Bo Diddley, respectively. So, as Kyle and I were unpacking this one, what we found out is that I listened to only Bo Diddley, the first album, and he listened to only Go Bo Diddley. So, here at Do You Approve This Groove, we got you covered. Mm-hmm. All right? We got it.
We got it all.
These albums were originally released in 1958 and 1959 through Chess Records, which is another one that we'd heard from earlier before. I forget who it was, but it was another similar artist back in the day. In previous episodes, we talked about the evolution of the blues coming from acoustic, sort of southern blues with Muddy Waters, artists like Muddy Waters early in his career, where those recordings are literally him, like sometimes it sounds like he's plucking one string, to artists like Howlin' Wolf, the electric blues that moved up to Chicago, and now we've come all the way through to Bo Diddley, which, I mean, this is plugged in rock and roll from the 50s. A guitar first album, with definitely some novelties to them. These songs had a bunch of novelties. If you think about the dance halls and radios and records, labels selling 45s back in the day, like this is definitely in that vein. I guess I'll start off with the album Bo Diddley. My understanding of Bo Diddley comes solely from the old Bo Jackson commercials. You don't know Bo, like those sorts of things.
Yep.
Do you remember those? Yeah, I mean, Vaguely. He used to be on there, and I mean, he had aged and definitely had a kind of a different persona then. But my dad used to talk about Bo Diddley as a guitar player when I was little. From those, and he was a Raiders fan too. Is a Raiders fan. Anyways, this is another one where we talked about the Ronettes, where like almost every song included the word "baby" or "I love you." Like most of his songs include diddly, diddy, or daddy, or Bo in there. So definitely some call and responses. Songs like Bo Diddley, I mean, they stand out. I'll cut it in here so you could hear it. I wouldn't say there's a lot of variation. And I don't think that I would need to listen to this front to back. Some of these songs, like sprinkled in on a playlist, would definitely get people going. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I don't need 2 albums worth of it. But some of these were pretty fun. What did you think?
My first impression of this, of Go Bo Diddley, the second part of this, was if I were a kid in the late 50s, early 60s listening to this, like I can see how this inspired a lot of kids at that age to pick up the guitar. Like a song like on Go Bo Diddley, a song like Bo's Guitar is a rockin' song that I can see inspiring a lot of kids that would, at a young age, teenagers in the early 60s to start playing, to become some of the prominent musicians that we will probably be hearing from the 70s, as they got older. I can see how inspirational this was. There's a couple of novelty songs, like almost like a skit. In a couple of places, there's a song on this one called Say Man, which is just 2 dudes ragging on each other, like just kind of giving each other a hard time, just ribbing each other. It's just kind of funny. Like it's, as far as it being a song, I don't know. It is what it is. It was just kind of funny. The one thing that I wrote down to bring up though is that I feel like every once in a while we come across an album that we have to talk about, or it could make a fun segment of problematic lyrics, because there's a song on this album called Little Girl,
Uh-huh.
that is like I'm looking at it here. Little girl, I go home with you. Like
Uh-huh.
it's definitely interesting to hear how some of these songs lyrically have aged. Um, but as a whole, I mean, overall, I'd say it's probably not for me. I think I would agree with what you said. There are some songs that if they were a part of a playlist and they came on, it would probably it would be cool to hear them. Probably not going to go out of my way to listen to the whole thing again. And I do see how it would be inspirational to kids thinking about picking up a guitar at this time in the world. It, in 2025, it's just kind of meh. All right,
It's another museum piece like we talked
yeah.
about with I think Muddy Waters or Howlin' Wolf. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you talk about what was the song where they were ragging on each other?
Say man.
They meant yeah. Immediately I thought of I think it was Yo Mama from the Far Side, right?
Yeah,
Same idea,
same
just like
idea. Yeah,
just very much like here's a song and we're gonna make it funny and people will laugh and it'll make people excited. Yeah. I scored this one. I don't know. I'm being critical of myself now, but I would probably go with like 2.5 to 3, something like that. I think we've hit the nail on the head with some of these as being museum pieces.
mm-hmm.
That out of respect for the artists and respect for their contribution to music in general, they're on the list, and I'm not going to argue with that. But they don't resonate with me a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I went with a 3 as well. Yeah, for pretty much the same
Yep.
reasons.
Perfect. Well, there's another one down. That was Bo Diddley slash Go Bo Diddley, the double LP in at 4:55. All right, at this point in the countdown, we're gonna break for our weekly segment. Again, I don't remember what the name is, but what else are we listening to? We'll get right into it because at this point, I think this is the third time we've done it. Maya, what else did you listen to this week?
Well, we talked about that Kid Cudi album a couple albums back, and we both really enjoyed it, and that kind of got me wanting to explore more introspective hip hop things that I thought might be along the same lines. So, what I ended up listening to this week and really enjoying is the new, just came out a couple of weeks ago, a month ago or so, new Mac Miller album, Balloonerism. Yeah, it's posthumous album. I mean, he passed in
Okay,
like
good.
he passed in
Yeah, I
like
was gonna let you have that. I was like,
yeah
wait a second.
yeah he passed in like 2018, I think. I mean, he's been gone for a while now. And
Yeah.
this, from what I saw, he had recorded most of this in like 2014. I don't know why it was shelved. I'm not entirely certain. It's got some pretty cool features on there. SZA's on there. Oh, I forget who else. There's a couple of good features on there, and I really enjoyed it. I it's a little bit. It does remind me a lot of that Kid Cudi album in the sense that it is like he very clearly was struggling, and for him particularly it was substance abuse issues and addictions and that sort of thing. But you were talking about like 3 song runs, like a heater on an album. The final 3 songs on this album I think are worth checking out if that's something that you're interested in. It's, Mannequins, Rick's Piano, and Tomorrow We'll Never Know are I sat there listening to this album this weekend. We were at a cheerleading competition for my daughter, and those are long days, so I'll put in headphones and just kind of zone out for a while, and I put this album on. And I got to those last 3 songs and I was in it. It's good stuff. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really good album. I'm glad to have listened to it, and I'll probably be looking into more of Mac Miller's stuff.
Yeah, we talked in between the albums a little bit about that hip hop from that time crossing over into the indie space, and Mac Miller was another one that definitely did that. I mentioned like Wale and some others, and Mac Miller definitely fit into that too, where people within my sort of scene were vibing to some of that too. So it's thanks for that. I didn't know that existed. It must be interesting to be an artist that does a feature on a posthumously released album also, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, and it's probably not, I mean, other than the obvious, it's probably not that different when, you get a track and it's just like, yeah, all right, I need 64 bars from you. Like, here's where you come in and it has to end by this. Okay, cool. Got it. Yeah, what a strange sort of thing. And also interesting, the idea that like someone in charge of his estate would I would like to assume good intent and say like, hey, we want to keep his name alive and put out his stuff there and make sure that people that love him have access to this stuff, right?
And I'm pretty sure it's
just money
actually
grab.
I'm pretty sure it's actually his second posthumous album. I think there is another one that has come out since he passed.
We got a real Jimi Hendrix situation here. Yeah. The stuff will keep coming. Well, cool. Thanks for that one. What I'm listening to this week dives back into the sort of my goth emo yesteryear. I have an album and then I'll throw out a song too, but I listen every once in a while to this podcast called CD Burners, which is recorded by these two guys that I think they host like the emo night tours where they're like a DJ, but they spin that genre and people go nuts for them. But anyways, they have a podcast where they talk about stuff, and they talked about My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. And listening to them kind of go back through some of that album and talk about they actually had Howard Benson on. I stopped listening to the podcast because I just wanted to listen to the album. So there's a plug for those guys. But you want to talk about a heater. All right. This is a theme. Maybe this episode should be called Heaters. I posted about this, but this album, and I'm going to get it out of the way first. I think if you objectively ignore the connotation of My Chemical Romance, right, retrospectively, Eyeliner and Hot Topic and Black Parade and Sad 13-Year-Olds and all, if you ignore that to when this album came out for you and I, it's like blew me away. Like, I was a fan of the scene, and in this podcast that I was talking to, they talked about how the guys had recorded their first album, Bullets for My Valentine, I think it was, and that album is trash. It sonically is trash. Like, it does not hold up at all. They played some of this album with some of the bands they were touring with, and they were out with Fred. No, it's not him. Fred, I can't remember his name. Chirino? That's his last name. That filled in and Take It Back Sunday for a while. And they had just tracked not Tell All Your Friends, Where You Want to Be. I think they had just tracked Where You Want to Be. And they played it. They played 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge for him. And like Fred was like, like, we need to go back. Like, we have to go back because they're going to kill the game, right? This album is so good. Tracks 7 through 13. That is a 5-song arc after the interlude that, for my money, I would put up against any 5 songs of any album. Look into my eyes, ever. I would put like that, like Thank You for the Venom all the way through. I Never Told You What I Do for a Living. Like, chef's kiss. It does not get better. And I know that Helena gets the love. I'm Not Okay, obviously, and rightfully so, gets the love, and The Ghost of You was a very dramatic music video. Listen to the last 5 songs and tell me that it's not, like, amazing. Like, it's just so good. Again, get over yourself. I didn't wear eyeliner. You don't have to wear eyeliner. It's fine. Like, these songs just kick ass. And I know, like, when this came out, like, we were both big fans of this.
Yeah. I remember this is one of my favorite. I said this before. You had mentioned AFI a few weeks ago, and I said something about how that was one of my favorite shows that I've ever been to. Another one of my favorite shows that I've ever been to was My Chemical Romance on this tour.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it wasn't the Furnace. I saw him in Clifton.
Syracuse?
No, it was in Clifton Park.
Okay, I'm thinking of a different one.
Or it was like Saratoga Winners or something like that. But a club, I mean, and this is seeing My Chemical Romance in a club on tour for 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. And it just was, yeah, it was good stuff. And for my money, I know My Chemical Romance became the godfathers of emo because of the Black Parade. I will take 3 Cheers over the Black Parade any day.
All day. Mm-hmm. All day. Like, it doesn't hold a candle to it. It doesn't, like, it just doesn't. And I remember you introduced me to this band, actually, because you had gone to that show. My memory was that they toured with Senses Fail, and you guys had seen them, and I thought it was at Syracuse because I don't think I was there. Like, it was a summer show, and we just went back to college, and like right before we went, like you had gone to that show. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Could be. I remember seeing Senses Fail at the Furnace in Syracuse.
Okay. I think that My Chem opened up for Senses Fail at the Furnace.
Could be.
And you saw them, and you're like, "Yo, this band was really great." And I checked it out. I was like, "Oh shit, yeah." And then they just blew up from it. But this was the album. Other one that I do want to put out to you, is one song from a band called Good Hangs. I don't even remember where I found this band. It might have been like artists similar to. I went down some of those rabbit holes sometimes. It's the song "I Only Do Push-Ups When I'm Drunk," in parentheses, drinking lonely. It is a great piece of nostalgic sort of indie emo like stuff. Like, I mean, it's on the themes of like being a drunk and that sort of thing, but the melody of it, I really appreciate it. The vocals I like. I would check out that. I don't like their other songs on the album, but that song is really good. So those are the 2 things that I listen to. I listen to 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge and that album, or that song by Good Hangs. All right. The 454th greatest album of all time comes to us from the notoriously hard to search for band Can, C-A-N. The album is titled, here we go, it's a Turkish phrase. It means Aegean okra. That's what it translates to. But it's Ege Bamyasi. That's what I'm going with. Say it with your chest. Ege Bamyasi. This is the 3rd studio album from the German krautrock band Can. It was released on November 29th of 1972 by United Artists Records. It's 40 minutes and 6 seconds long. The label is United Artists and Spoon Records. Great. Krautrock, avant funk, psychedelic rock, and space rock. I'm gonna just tee up here. This album surprised me. This is one where I was looking at it, and based on, we listened to, I think it was Black Uhuru. Like, this is one that just based on the name, I was like, all right, this is going to be some reggae or some African stuff or something. Like, oh, okay, we'll get through it. Man, I heard this and I was like, what? In a great way. And I have a feeling that this album is up your alley.
Yeah. I was prepared to say, I think we're going to diverge on this one. And it sounds like we're not, and that's awesome because I really, really liked this. What did you like about it?
So, first, I listened to this while I was shoveling my driveway, right? So there's kind of like the music is on, and I'm thinking about other things, but like I'm hearing it, and as I literally was tying my boots, the song "Sing Swan Song" like resonated. And do you know why it resonated with me? Do you know what this song is?
No, I have something to talk about with this song, but it's probably not. No, why? What?
You know that this song has been repurposed?
Yes, I did. Yeah, yep.
Is this your note?
No, but I do know. Yeah, Kanye used it, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I immediately was like, "Wait, this is familiar." And I'll cut this in so you can hear it. That sort of like swaying vocal, right? I was like, "Wait a second. I know this. I know this." And then he gets to the end of the phrase and I don't know what the lyrics are, but it sounds like, and again, this is a German band. Sounds like he says drunken hot girls. Like it sounds like that's how he ends the phrase. And I was like, "Holy shit. What the hell is happening right now?" With that as like, first of all, the fact that Kanye West either was played and recognized or went and found this, his current politics and demeanor notwithstanding, the dude is a genius.
Hmm.
My like he's credited as saying like his favorite instrument is the human voice because it is the most versatile instrument in the universe, right? You can do almost anything with a human voice. So for him to just hear this tune, and then I'm just imagining him saying, "Well, yo, did they just say drunken hot girls right there?" And then to flip that into a whole song, like props to him. That made me think of this album in a way that I don't think I would have had I not made that connection. And the way that I thought about this album was, this is a gold mine of samples.
Yeah.
Like the recording of these drums, and I know that the version I listened to was remastered in 2004, so I don't know what it sounded like before then, but the quality of the sound of these drums was amazing to me.
Yep.
Like it should, you could sample almost any song on this and cut it, and like you done, you have a beat, it's set.
One of my top notes is about how the drums are so high in the mix and how cool it sounds.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not a skilled enough drummer to know like, is it like it's, I know what a breakbeat is, but it's almost like parts of these songs are just breakbeats.
Hmm.
Which again, as a person that understands like how early hip hop was put together and how they sample those beats, like I was like, yeah, that I could see why. I didn't read enough of it to know like, yeah, this has been a well of people to go to and cut beats from forever. Maybe it has been. I don't know, but I liked it, and it's weird. The song "Soup," 10 minutes and 32 seconds long, is weird. There's sounds that reminded me of some of the two Stooges songs that we liked that were just like,
Yep.
this is a soundscape and strange. But Vitamin C is another like banger. Like that song is so good, so good. I'm all right. I've talked enough. Tell me what you think.
I'm so glad you like this because I absolutely loved it as well. And the thing that I had written down about Sing Swan Song was, as I was listening to it, my first thought was, this is very much a Radiohead song. It's like, and listening to it, I'm like, man, it just feels, it vibes like a Radiohead song. And I went and looked it up, and that's when I saw the Kanye relation there. He had sampled it, but Radiohead has, and I'm not a huge Radiohead fan. Like I appreciate some of their stuff. Never really got into it, but Radiohead and Tom York have credited that song with being a huge inspiration on, especially on Kid A and Amnesiac, two of their albums. So it was fun to listen to that and hear like that early influence. But this album coincides with my recent like jazz and funk kick, and that the very high mix of drums was fun to listen to. I think what I like about this is that every time I listen to it, and I've re-listened to it a couple of times now, and every time I re-listen to it, there's something more to find, which is something I really appreciate. Even that song "Soup," the 10-minute long song, towards the end, I got a little turned off by it. You know, you would reference some of those longer songs by the Stooges. Actually, the first thing that came to mind with me was towards the end of that song. Not quite so extreme, but I had a little bit of a Frankie teardrop vibe going on from that Suicide
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
album.
yeah.
And it turned me
Yeah.
off. It turned me off a little bit with that. Less scary. Just it felt like being inside someone's brain as they lose grip on reality, and it was just a little
Uh-huh.
unsettling for me. Artistically, I think
Hmm.
it was great, but just a little unsettling. But yeah, this was a really fun
This
album.
was this is a cool one. Yeah. What did you score this one?
I give it a 4.
Yeah, I'd give this one a 4 too. This one was cool enough that like my wife and I were going to dinner and I played her Sing Swan Song and just to see if she would pick up on it, and she's not a as fluent, I suppose, in music as some of us are. But she was like, "Oh, cool." I was like, "Yeah." So when I think about scoring it, I was like, "This is one that I would share." I actually shared it with my boss at work too because he's a drummer, and I was like, "I wonder if he like." I mean, he has a degree in percussion, so I wondered if like he was aware of this or if this was an album that was in pretty high regard or not. But yeah, this one was cool. I really enjoyed it. Like from the rafters, like coming out of nowhere. This one,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
cool. This is yeah. And as you were talking about some of that stuff, it's we talked a couple times tonight about kind of recapping these 50 albums, just you know, in a quick conversation. It's already been so cool to have context and reference points for some of the stuff within the first 50 albums.
hmm
Like I can feel our ability and my ability to reference and call back and pick out influences and pieces and all this reminds me of this, like, is already expanding.
yes,
I mean, 50 albums is a
massively.
lot of music,
Yeah,
but like it's pretty cool. Like,
yeah,
like we're adding colors to our palette and we're able to see more of them now, like, which is just fun. And it is such a great experience when you can find a sample organically
hmm
and be like, no shit, oh my god. Like, I texted you as soon as I heard that,
yeah,
like, that's right, that's how you okay. I was getting my shoes on and I was headed outside. I was like, I don't know how to add a note right now. Like, I can't forget how to do this. And I didn't think about how much it would register with me. It's impossible for me to forget now, but I was worried that I would forget that reference
yeah.
moving forward. First thing Swan Song. So, anyways, yeah, wild. Anyways, that was the band Can's album Ege Bamyasi in at 454. 453 on the greatest albums of all time is Pretty Hate Machine from the artist Nine Inch Nails. This album was released on October 20th of 1989. We'll talk about it, but man, does it sound like it. This comes from Trent Reznor, who's gone on to do a lot of things within music. It's on the label TVT, 48 minutes, 42 seconds long. I think this is accurately described as industrial rock, electronic rock, electro industrial, synth pop, and alternative rock. His first studio album, his debut. Kyle, my thought growing up alongside of you was that when we were younger, I always either I knew or I assumed that you had some sort of love or respect for Nine Inch Nails. Am I wrong?
No, respect for sure.
Sure.
I so
You were
my
always way more in tune. You were always way more in tune with the early '90s rock stuff than I was.
Mhm.
Like, I missed that whole boat, and I felt like you always, like, from your Smashing Pumpkins fandom to all that stuff. Like, I didn't get on the rock train until like the late '90s, so I missed all this stuff. But anyways,
yeah.
go on.
Um, I've always generally liked Nine Inch Nails, but to be honest, my listening experience with them was more from like the Downward Spiral on, which is I don't know if that's their second album, but there's a couple of albums there of theirs that I really like. That I really like the Downward Spiral. I like Fragile. That's fantastic. With Teeth, great album. I never really sat and listened to Pretty Hate Machine that I can remember, and it's not the Nine Inch Nails that I like. It's
All right.
fine. It's good. It's fine, but it's not like I They're not a band that I'm a massive fan of, but I will put them on from time to time. But I don't see myself putting this album back on, really.
Yeah, I listened to this again, not having context for it. I think I told you last time that this would be my first time listening, like intentionally, to Nine Inch Nails songs. I had heard Head Like a Hole before. I think I had heard Sanctified as like part of soundtracks or something like that, or just osmosis, I guess. I mentioned earlier that this is labeled as like electro industrial or electro rock, and as I listened to this, this to me was squarely in the middle of two very different times in music history, right? First was like that 80s electro rock. I'm thinking like Depeche Mode.
It was very new wave. Like there was a very strong new wave vibe to it. Dark
right
new
between
wave.
That,
but yeah,
it's like that and Marilyn Manson.
Yeah,
mixed together. Where when I was listening to it, I was like, I can totally see where we go from like bands like Depeche Mode and others like that to Nine Inch Nails to Marilyn Manson. Like that is a natural progression to me that like I don't even think you'd have to add other stops in between there. Like I mean the lyrical content in and of itself is just different for the time. So I could see why that would stand out. The music on this album I don't think is that different. Maybe a little darker, right, than the 80s synth pop stuff. And I would imagine that that's like one of the things that would stand out to some people is like, wait, so this sounds like a lot of the music that's on the radio, but like they're not going to play this on the radio.
Yeah.
So it has that edge to it. And then you just turn that up to 1,000 with people like Marilyn Manson. You know what I mean? Like we talked about museum pieces before. To me, this is a museum piece album. Like it is such a cross section of a very specific time and taste and genre of music that I get why it's on the list. I respect it, but it doesn't age well.
No.
Right? Again, it doesn't age well. Like the sound of it just doesn't age well.
You can very clearly pinpoint its era just by listening to it. I appreciate that you can hear what their sound would become listening to this album, but this album isn't, to me, what Nine Inch Nails is.
Can you say more about that? Because I honestly don't know.
So you take that balance of like the synth pop, dark new wave, and the industrial, and just dial back the synth pop new wave stuff and dial up the industrial stuff. And that's where they get later on. They had, I said that I thought that the Downward Spiral was their second album. They had an album in between there called Broken that I don't know very well either. But once they get to the Downward Spiral and it's songs like, you probably know Closer, I Wanna Fuck You Like an Animal.
I mean,
you don't know that one?
It's only 10. It's 10:30 on Monday. Damn. No, I do know that song. Yes. I do know that song.
You get to that stuff, and it's much more of the industrial, dark end of things, and the synth pop new wave stuff is dialed way back. And you can hear a lot of what their sound would become in this first album, in Pretty Hate Machine. But it definitely seems to take them a couple of albums to find that.
I mean, enough people found it. Album sales and certifications are like ongoing; they don't stop. So, what we're 36 years after this album's release. I mean, it's 3 times platinum in the U.S. It's gone platinum in Argentina. I mean, it sold albums, and obviously it helped put Trent Reznor on the map. Yeah, I would give this album a 2. Like, this is one that I don't think I need to hear again.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard it.
Yeah, I went with a 3 just because I appreciated hearing their early sound. I could be convinced to revise that down to like a 2.5 though, just for the fact that I don't think I'll go back to it. I mean, Head Like a Hole is a great song. I like
Yeah.
that, but otherwise I don't see myself going back to put this on intentionally.
Yeah. Sanctified is like, it's the other song I think that's probably most well known on this one. And it's just like cringy. Like, I don't know. It's, but not cringy from like a prudish standpoint. Like, I don't give a shit about that. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's the lyrics over the music, like we've talked about. It's just like a disconnect there to
Hmm.
me. But and yeah, they were getting there. And like I said, he's done a shit ton of work scoring movies and
Yeah.
very effectively. I
Yeah.
mean, like
Award winning.
I think this yeah, The Social Network I think was the first one. I don't think it's the first one he's done. He's done video games too, but The Social Network was the first movie that came to that I was aware of. I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh shit, he did that." And that's definitely a good one. But yeah. Anyways, that was Nine Inch Nails' "Pretty Hate Machine" in at 453. The 452nd greatest album of all time is Anthology from Diana Ross and the Supremes. This album was released in 1974. It is a double LP. Um, it's a long one. It's a career spanning anthology, like most of them are. Um, there's lots of producers again because there's so many songs, lots of producers, lots of music. Kyle, we have talked about your disdain for Motown era stuff. Did they win you over?
Um, you want to go first on this one so you can say all your nice stuff before I destroy it?
I don't know.
No,
I
I'm just
mean,
okay. So,
maybe
I
we'll just go blow for blow here.
I think it's gloves off on this one. No, I my problem with this album isn't necessarily with the music of this album. So I want to put out there first that the music of this, I was okay with. It wasn't my thing. It wasn't something that I particularly would look out for. Um, and I have some more to say about that, and I'll get to that. But I have a rant associated with this album. And
The
it's
floor is yours, sir.
I'm starting so when we started listening to these albums, when we started listening through this list of albums, I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to critique the list itself because
Hmm.
I think there are always going to be albums that I think should be on this list that aren't on this list. And why is this album on the list, but this album that I love isn't on the list? Or why is this one here and not there? And I very much am not interested in that kind of conversation because the list is what it is. That being said, the thing that I'm getting a little frustrated with this list is some of these greatest hits albums and anthologies. Um, and I think on the surface, I actually I had to take a walk today at lunchtime and kind of process my thoughts about this because at first they weren't consistent. My thoughts weren't consistent, but I think I came up with a way of explaining how I feel about this because I have given a 5 to essentially a greatest hits album, that King Sunny Ade album. And even earlier this round, that Al Green greatest hits, I didn't feel as strongly about that as I do about this. But so I looked into it. Diana Ross and the Supremes, over the course of their career, put out 29 albums, 29 studio albums. You know how many of those studio albums are on this list?
How
None.
many?
None. Not a single one. But they have a greatest hits anthology with 50 songs that made this list. So to me, that says the Supremes never put out an album strong enough to make this list. They put out a lot of great music. The music on this album is good. The music on this album I appreciate, but they never put out an album that was strong enough to be on this list. And out of curiosity, I looked into it and I compared that to Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan put out 40 albums, 11 more than the Supremes. But he put out 40 albums in his career. He has 10 albums on this list. 10 different Bob Dylan albums are on this list, which to me says he has 10 albums that are worthy of being on this list. The Supremes don't have any. Again, not to say that they don't have great music. They have great music. To me, this felt like, and I don't know the ins and outs of how these albums were ranked and chosen. I know that it involved artists ranking and voting and contributing and music journalists ranking and voting and contributing, but the actual like final determinations I don't know too much about. But to me, this felt like, yeah, the Supremes are important. Diana Ross and the Supremes are important and they deserve a spot on this list, but they don't have any albums good enough to be on this list. So we're going to put this anthology on the list. And the problem that I have with it mainly is how long it is. And that's where my inconsistencies are, because I mean, I gave that King Sunny Ade album a 5. And what I kind of came down to is, so for a living, I'm a writer, right? Like I'm a grant writer. And the way I approach a grant, if I have a 25-page narrative that I have to write, personally, I'm going to write 35 pages. And I'm going to, give that to my reviewers, to my editors, who are going to help me then chop it down and cut it down and just keep the best 25 pages, because that's what it needs to be. I feel like if this had a good editor who would cut it down to a single disc, I would have been a lot happier with it. And that's my rant. Again, not to do with the music. I liked the music. The music was good. This was actually an album where I kind of started to recognize that, and this may be part of a discussion that we have if we talk about our experience listening to these first 50 albums. This was an album that I realized that the way I approach albums has changed. The way I approach listening to these albums has changed from 500 down to, 452, wherever we're at with this one. I'm listening in a different way. And because of that, I appreciated a lot of the music on this album. But it was too much. And I'm kind of starting to feel like if an artist didn't put out an album that was worthy of being on this list on its own, I'm struggling with how I feel about that.
Having heard you spew bullshit. No, I'm kidding. No, I agree with most of what you said. We're gonna talk about, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Roberta Flack next. Mm-hmm. Right? And I was thinking about this today. I don't know if her other album, if she has another album on the list. Do you?
I don't think she does.
If she does, it would have to, without question, include Killing Them Softly on it, right? Yep. Her most well-known song.
Certainly.
I think her album being on this list is the flip side of what you just talked about. Right? Mm-hmm. Her album, First Take, is respected for that album as a piece of art, regardless of the fact that her best well-known, probably most beloved song is not on it. Mm-hmm. But that album spoke for itself. Okay. So that's sort of, I guess, like, is this less of a list of great albums because the song Killing Them Softly is not on it? No, I don't believe it is, right? We don't need to make room for that album with that song because that is one of the best songs of all time. And in fact, I bet that song is fairly high up on the Rolling Stone top 500 songs of all time list, right? Mm-hmm. And rightfully so. Okay. So to your point, like, would you prefer the powers that be pick one of the 28, however many you said, Supremes albums that had like 3 of their best songs on there just to throw it up and say, well, I mean, it's the Supremes and Diana Ross. Like, I mean, no. So then I think you have to look at the collection of songs as a whole. Now, that being said, as I just defend it, I do agree that I think anthologies are weaker entries onto this list than others, right? Like, but as a list that's, if I think of this list as a time capsule of the 500 most important albums of all time that we are going to share within a parallel universe that doesn't have this art, right? Then I would say that, yeah, I think this should be on there. Like, I think this anthology should be on there because, bro, you want to this first disc has 2 3-song heaters on there, 2 of them. Come See About Me, Stop in the Name of Love, Back in My Arms Again, bang, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. Okay, there's that one. Then and now I get what you're saying about lots of songs. 7 songs later, You Can't Hurry Love, This Old Heart of Mine, and You Keep Me Hanging On. An immaculate inning. Like, I mean, it's like those are 3 great songs. Now, I will say, with that being said, again, I agree with you that this could have been pared down. This could have been 125 song, and I'm sure they have a bunch of greatest hits albums. I'm sure that there are others. But this could have been 125 song anthology and we would have been set.
Yeah.
Like, and now, again, 50 years later, those other songs probably resonate with a lot more people than they do now, right? So, for example, the song Mother Dear, couldn't pick it out of the lineup. I bet that there's a bunch of people that loved that song and they couldn't not put it on the list, right? Where Did Our Love Go is another good one. The other song that specifically, I mean, those 6 songs that I listed, like, those are timeless. Like, they carry this thing to me across the finish line. The second disc, I don't think I have anything on that. There's probably I mean, they covered a Beatles song, A Hard Day's Night, on there. It Makes No Difference. I feel like I know that one, but this first disc is the one. Did you happen to catch the song Buttered Popcorn?
No, not
It is
anything
a
that stuck
very
out.
it is a very not well disguised double entendre and a very suggestive song, which I just thought was funny. You know, we have this sort of connotation as this being a much more innocent time, you know, the 60s, that sort of thing. And this song was not. Like,
Not
I can
that.
imagine parents freaking out about this song. And it is very funny in retrospect to hear that. Now,
Did you happen to catch the one thing that I noted down? Did you happen to catch the beginning of Reflections?
not my memory, no.
As soon as
What was your thought on that one?
the beginning of Reflections is what was sampled at the beginning of Stellar by Incubus.
We talked before about the sound moving around in the
Yep.
mix, right?
Yep.
Did it really sample it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a sample.
Because it is a very quick.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But what a random part of a random song, like you talked about with that Kanye, with Kanye sampling that that Can song. Like, how did they find that? DJ Kilmore and Incubus, was he like, oh yeah, I know this song from Diana Ross and the Supremes, I'm going to use this at the beginning of this? Or was it like they were just digging around, or a song came on, they were digging around? Like,
You know what I think it was? I think it's that he had this double LP in the stacks and he looked at the first disc and said, nah, man, the first disc is played out. I'll go deeper. Thus adding credence to the producers saying, you know what, this needs to be a double LP. So DJ Kilmore rightfully dug through the stacks and said, I'm going to go deeper and
grab
find.
that, yeah.
And I didn't go very far. He went in the first 5 seconds of the first track of the second disc. But still, he went to the second disc.
yep.
Yeah, I've said before that I love some Motown, and I don't know enough about them. Like, I hear the songs and I know the songs. I don't always know who the groups are. A lot of them sound very, very similar musically, vocally, all that stuff. So to hear this, "You Keep Me Hanging On" is probably one of my top 3 to 5 Motown songs of all time. Like, I love that song, and I pray that my favorite one is on this list because I will go nuts when that song is on here. Um, it's a deeper cut, but man, I'm not even gonna spoil it. This Those songs I listed, dude, they speak for themselves. This should be on the list. I'm surprised it's not higher, but I agree. Like, if they had pared this down to 12 songs as an anthology and said, like, dude, these are the 12 best Supreme and Diana Ross songs, like, I would imagine that this would be higher on the list.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, so what did you score this? Like a 2?
No, I gave it a 3 because, like I said,
Okay.
I do appreciate the music. I do like the music. I couldn't go any higher than that though, just because of the length, because of everything that I said about my feelings towards anthologies and greatest hits albums at this point.
If they let me curate 12 songs, it would be a 5. Because they didn't, and it's long, and a lot of this is just kind of wasted on me. I gave this one a 4, but that's because, like, those good songs are so good. They're so good. You can't beat some of those. Anyways, that was Diana Ross and the Supremes anthology in at number 452, much to Kyle Sugarin. All right, the 451st greatest album of all time is the album First Take by Roberta Flack. Kyle, before we get into this one, this is a very timely reaction to this album, given the news that Roberta Flack just passed away, published today. Today is February 24th, 2025. And you saw this news and shared it with me earlier today. I was like, oh man, that's pretty crazy. So I feel like we should honor her a little bit as we do this. Roberta Flack is an American singer, a pianist, definitely in the jazz and soul R&B genres. Her best known song, which we talked about just earlier, is "Killing Me Softly" with his song that holds up on its own, also famously covered by the Fugees and others. She is the first artist to win the Grammy Award for Record of the Year in consecutive years. She collaborated with a lot of musicians in the 70s and 80s. One of the things that I appreciated about this album in particular is that it includes, at least on the version that I had, it includes like an excerpt of an interview with, I'm assuming it was a producer, that talks about kind of like how he discovered her. And I'm going to paraphrase the hell out of this, but essentially he was saying, like, she was playing in clubs in like Washington D.C. and he was in there, and like she always just got the crowd with her. She held them in the palm of her hand, like she was just a performer and could do it. Like, so in a world of kind of semi-pro amateurs, to him at least, like she just stood out. Um, and I'll start this one off too. This was the second album on this group of 10 that I was very pleasantly surprised about. Um, I think the mix of this one is another strong point. Like, this album in particular, and I haven't listened to more in her catalog, but this album in particular is very stripped down. There's some songs which, I mean, it's a piano, a string bass, and a drum. A drum set, but a very sparsely played drum set. I mean, her voice cuts through this one. We'll talk about more of the specific songs in a second, but like I really liked this one, and we talked earlier about how sometimes listening to these 10 albums in 10 days to kind of prepare for this stuff feels a little bit like a chore. This is one that I kept coming back to when I knew I needed to listen to others.
Yeah.
I was interested in coming back to this one. What were your thoughts?
I would very much agree that this came out of nowhere for me, and I ended up really kind of liking it. There are a couple of 5-star songs. Like I didn't give the album a 5, but there are a couple of 5 out of 5 songs on this album that I will very happily come back to and replay regularly. The first song
Mhm.
on the album compared to what is, it's like a jazzy, soulful blues album. The drums are smooth. The bass just rides there nicely, and the piano is just full of soul and just feel. Trying Times was a good song that I really enjoyed. There's a lot on this album that I really got a lot out of. Some of it was a little slow for me, which I think kind of held it back overall, but as a whole, yeah, I really got a lot out of this album, and certain songs in particular, but as a whole, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I want to backtrack a little bit. This is her debut studio album. I referenced like the notes from the producer or record exec, whoever it was. It was released on June 20th of 1969, recorded in February of that same year, on Atlantic Records, produced by Joel Dorn. It is 46 minutes and 8 seconds. So now that we've got that out of the way, yeah, second song Angelitos Negros is sung in Spanish, and it sounds like it is crawling out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I was almost positive that it had to have been included in one of them, and from what I saw, no. I don't know the story behind that one. Maybe I can figure it out. I don't know like why it's there. Nope, and I can't click on it, so who knows? But that's not her song, and in fact, as I'm this was one that when I listened to it, we've talked about this how some of the albums on here by singer songwriters are by songs that are not theirs. This is one that I'm looking at it for the first time right now. She didn't write any of these songs,
hmm.
but man, it does not sound like it when she sings them.
Yeah, she owns them.
Like she owns them, and I think that like I've never understood, or I've had a hard time understanding when people talk about performers and putting themselves in it. I'm just like, you sing the song and it resonates with people or it doesn't. This is one that challenges that preconception. Like, she sounds like these are her songs, to where again I thought that they were. The first release of this album includes only the first 8 songs. Then there was a 2020 anniversary edition with bonus tracks that was released, that includes the song Trade Winds, which I really, really like. I think that's a really strong song. The song The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, again, is a song that's not hers, by Ewan McCall. That the notes say Clint Eastwood heard and fell in love with her version of it and included it in a film, this 1971 film Play Misty for Me, which I think was it was his directorial debut. And that one is a very beautiful song. And that's a love song that struck me. So again, this album really surprised me in the way like it's slower, it's quieter. I really love the mix. The songs I can really appreciate. I really liked it, and I really did not expect to.
Yeah,
After our kind of hits and misses with some of the male R&B stuff that we've heard, even on this week with Al Green and Marvin Gaye, I kind of expected more of the same. Especially not knowing any of the songs off it. Like, this was all brand new to me.
yeah,
I really liked it.
good. Yeah, yeah. It was definitely an enjoyable album, for sure.
Did you score this one yet?
I gave this a 3.5.
I give this one a 4. I really liked it. All right. That was Roberta Flack's First Take, first release in 1969. That brings us to everyone's favorite segment. I've got one better, in which Kyle and I examine this list of 10 albums, and for better or worse, we say, yeah, I don't know, that was good, but I think this album is better. Um, Kyle, we were just talking about how one of the problems with this week's group is like generally we really liked a lot of these, so it kind of feels like almost a betrayal to say, hey, I really like this album, but I think this one's better. But it's all subjective. Anyway, so what was your first thought for I've Got One Better?
So, I thought a lot about the Sinead O'Connor album and how it just didn't quite hit for me. There was nothing wrong with it, but it didn't quite hit for me. And the album that I kept going back to thinking about that album was, and this is probably a little obvious of a comp because female lead singer from Ireland in the early to mid 90s, you can probably see
Is it
where
the
I'm
Cranberries?
it's the Cranberries. It's the
Yes,
Cranberries.
as it should be.
No need to argue. So that's the album with like Zombie on it.
Yeah.
That
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a clarifying question before you get into why. Did you look and see if that album is on this list?
I didn't know.
I didn't either.
Okay.
I'm gonna look right now. But anyways, keep going.
I just I feel like that album my drawback to the Sinead O'Connor album wasn't that I didn't like the songs or that I didn't thematically like it. I liked both of those things about it. I just didn't like the production of the album. And I feel like this Cranberries album, No Need to Argue, kind of makes up for that. It gets towards the same themes in a lot of places. I mean, Zombie is kind of in the same realm of theme as a lot of the Sinead O'Connor album, but it just hits me better as a rock album. But there is just something about that female Irish vocal that just hits me. I like it. It works. It sounds good. If I had to choose between the two, I would definitely reach for the Cranberries over Sinead O'Connor.
That is an outstanding pick for this segment because while you were talking about it, I can see that album is listed on some of Rolling Stone's sort of like retrospective reviews after 1994 lists, but it is not included on the list of 500 greatest albums of all time. And when we talked about, I think we talked about Sinead O'Connor and her chart position like around the world, that album that you referenced from the Cranberries is strikingly similar when it comes to its position on the charts and sales. I mean, worldwide has sold 17 million copies, 7 times platinum in the United States, which Sinead O'Connor's album did not do. Maybe that's another great case study for Nothing Compares to You is such a well-regarded song that people couldn't, or that Sinead O'Connor is such an influence on artists that would come after her, including the Cranberries, because I'm looking at these notes and they reference Sinead O'Connor and her work influencing their work.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly the way O'Riordan handles the phrases in some songs, like and in Zombie. Yeah. So it's an outstanding pick by you. Great pull. You were not confident about that one, but I think that's an outstanding reference. Well done, sir. Now we're gonna have to edit mine and go first to end with yours on a strong note. So as I was listening to this week's, I usually, similar to the way you explained this, I try to think of albums from my repertoire that are analogous, I guess, to some of the stuff we listen to. And the only thing that I could come up with, which again is a stretch to say it's better, I think for this week I'm going with more of a like, if you liked, then you should check out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know who our audience is that likes the band Can. But if you like Can, I would encourage you to check out The Sound of Animals Fighting. It's a band that I've shared songs from you about. Specifically, their album, Lover, the Lord Has Left Us. I'll keep it brief because we're at the end of this, but The Sound of Animals Fighting is a collective of a lot of musicians from a bunch of bands that I really liked. Their first album is a concept album with like interlude, like kick-ass song interlude, and it goes back and forth. Their second album, Lover, the Lord Has Left Us, is way more experimental and includes a lot of it includes vocals in different languages. It includes kind of that droning sound that we heard from the song. I think it was Soup was the long one.
Mm-hmm.
There were elements of that I was like, man, this reminds me a lot. Even the way that the drums were mixed. There's a song, Chiriacho Summit, which is sung in part in another language. I wish I knew which one it was. And the way the drums are mixed in that reminded me a lot of that Can record. So that's a very kind of vibe driven record. Also, there's some songs that stand alone as songs, but that album did not do well commercially, and it didn't even do. It's a tough listen. In fact, I just read an article. This band was revisited because it's the 20th anniversary of their first release, and they had said like that first album really was pretty strong, and then they got to it was a harder listen before they regrouped for their third album. But again, I don't think that it's better, but I thought it was an interesting parallel listen. So that's The Sound of Animals Fighting's Lover the Lord Has Left Us.
Nice.
I think that wraps up this episode.
Yeah. That was quite the list of albums this week.
This was a fun one, yeah. All right, till next time.
Yeah.
Nailed it. All right, so we got to write our little tag. In this episode, we count down albums 460 through 451. Kyle and I continue to butt heads when it comes to Motown, but we can at least agree on anthologies and their places on this list. Apparently, krautrock is a thing, and we both really liked it, and we hope you do too. We also have a timely discussion on recently passed away Roberta Flack and her contributions to the list. I am Tyler, and he is still Kyle. Let's get to it.